All right. I think we're going live. All right. We'll go 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool. Glad to have you back in the studio, Jonathan.
Yay. I got to tune into part of that last week while I was traveling. I pulled it up on my phone. It was very good. Good conversation.
We appreciate the extra download.
I got to contribute in any way possible, even if I'm not a co-host.
Yeah. It was awkward, man, doing the intro. Not, it was weird. So, but yeah, it was good practice. So,
welcome to my world on a regular basis with my.
I know you're doing like 6 of those a week.
By the way, I do have to mention, just to get off topic just for a second here, I had a cool company I interviewed with my composite show last week. It's a company that does these really high performance pickleball paddles. Okay. I did not expect them to send me anything. Lo and behold, I get a package today. This is the benefits, the added advantage of podcasting, Sean. So I get a box today.
Nice. Oh, wow.
And I got 2 pickleball paddles from this company just for talking to them.
High performance pickleball paddles.
Yeah, these are like $250 paddles, man.
What?
So, yeah.
It's pickleball.
I know. Yeah, it's the ones that I got at Dig Sports were like $40. So I better get good before I can use these.
I just don't know how a paddle can make that much different with that ball. It just doesn't seem like it would make.
So from a material standpoint, it's the body, how they make the like they'll put like different materials in there. Some of them like a foam, like a high density.
Are there any standards right now? Or is it?
Well, there used to be. You couldn't use. I think you could not use a high density foam for a while there. It was illegal, but then they actually made it legal. So I think a lot of them are using that today, and they're using this kind of this honeycomb type composite core that really gives it some
bounce,
oomph with that pickleball.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, and these guys were like one of the first, they were into making pickleball paddles back in the early days, like before everybody jumped in, all these other companies jumped in on. So they've been designing these paddles. They're actually using AI now. It was cool. It was a cool conversation because they're using a lot of metrics to design their, to design these paddles and make them even better. So
I'll tell you, last weekend there was on ESPN, like not the Ocho, like ESPN regular.
Yeah.
It was like a 3-hour US Open pickleball tournament.
That's crazy. Isn't that crazy?
Like, man, it just goes from,
I mean, it is the dead season, but
yeah,
for sports, I mean, like you got baseball, but baseball's early. It's early in the baseball season. So it's really hard for me to get, super involved in baseball right now because it's
you got to pace yourself. It's such a long season. You got to I wait till the All-Star break.
Out of 162 games. I mean, it's like, and they are starting out really good, but
yeah. I like to tune into baseball after the All-Star break.
Yes.
When things heat up, that's when things get good, all that kind of stuff. So, well, cool. Well, we're going to, let me do a little teaser here.
Yes.
Real quick. So we pulled out, let me tell you how we got here. I was on a training from a very popular email marketer, and he recommended a chapter of a book that we go read, and it was about negative reverse selling.
Love it.
And that book was called You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar, which is
that looks old school.
I don't know, that's just 1980s.
It looks like a cassette, it looks like it should have like a couple of CDs or cassettes in there,
It might, I don't know. But so yeah, I picked it up and I read chapter 8 and I was like, oh, this is really good. And I sent it to you.
Yes.
And then I started reading around the rest of the book, I was like, man, this is some good stuff, and it's 30 years old. I mean, this book was written in 1995, but one of the new gurus that sells sales training, he has read this book. I can tell.
Yeah,
a lot of his stuff says word for word what some of
he
the
also
stuff.
runs. I don't know if you see he does. I mean, I don't know how much Facebook advertising they do, but I see it on my feed a lot. So
The Sandler, or
no, for the
new guy,
the guy you're talking about,
yeah,
that basically ripped it off, and
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it still works apparently because that guy's doing well. But yeah,
yeah.
so we'll go through that one chapter specifically, and then I pulled a couple other bullets out from some other stuff. Yeah, just some good reminders.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk a little bit about how we might apply that to like email or sales pages or things like that. Because obviously, this is mostly in-person selling
Mm-hmm.
since it was written before the Netscape browser came out.
Yep.
So kind of old, right?
A
Or
little.
right about the time Netscape came out.
The principles
95.
are so good though, because it takes away the pressure of feeling like, it has to be done. It kind of it takes away a little bit of that.
Well, he says in chapter, it takes a little while to warm up to the book. The first, he could probably cut if they were doing a revised edition, they could cut the first 4 chapters. A lot more warm up than probably today's books would have. But in chapter like 5, I think it is, he says he was kind of at this point where he was trying to figure out, like, if I could create the ideal sales system, what would it look like?
Yeah.
And he had 5 things. Prospects would deliver the presentations themselves. They would raise the stalls and objections and resolve them. They would qualify themselves financially. They would close the sale. And finally, they would thank me for calling on them. Now, that sounds like a pipe dream.
I know. It sounds like impossible, in this day and age, because no one trusts anyone. But,
but yeah, he's, it's probably not exactly that good. But as I was reading that, you know what I thought about? I was like, that sounds like a lot of funnels online.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
They click, they get they serve themselves the presentation, the webinar, the whatever. Like, they read the FAQs. Yeah. Like, it's like, this is like way before the internet. He was kind of ahead of the curve. So, but he's talking about being able to do this in person. So,
yeah,
we'll go over that. And then you've got a little piece of direct mail that you want to share.
Local piece that was a great example of something kind of unique, but I thought this is worthy of sharing because it really caught my attention.
Yeah.
And
that's a good sign. You got to notice those kind of things.
That's right. Exactly. So,
all right, well, let's get on to the juvenile beer talk segment.
Yes. Our favorite part.
Yeah. The real reason for the show.
All right. So I have today, this is from Rogue Brewing Company, a hazelnut brown nectar.
Kind of the big boys of craft brew, right?
Yep. Yeah. This is straight from the grocery store aisle. I didn't go to any place unique. This is something I just pulled off the shelf at the Publix, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm not huge. I got to be honest. I'm not huge fans of a lot of the stuff they've done in the past. Because a lot of it's IPAs, but I was just trying to find something unique that I haven't had. This is what caught my eye. Not to mention, anytime I see a nut, it reminds me of Buckeye, and I absolutely hate the Ohio State Buckeyes. So
hazelnuts and Buckeyes do look kind of similar, don't they? Ohio State hazelnuts.
Now, I will say, I'll give them kudos. Awards 2017 Best of U.S. American Brown Ale World Beer Awards. They won a silver in Brussels, the Brussels Beer Challenge. They won a platinum in 2018, a couple of platinums. So
I'll be curious. I used to drink a lot of Newcastle.
Yeah.
Which is a brown ale. So I'd be curious, like, if you're familiar with that one, like how it compares.
It's been a long time since I've had a Newcastle. So, but
with this show, I mean, we're always drinking something new. So, all right. Well, what I've got on my end is from the company Infamous Brewing Company. They're about 4 miles down the road here.
Yes.
That beer
cool.
the beer that I have is not on this picture or on their website. But man, I saw this and I was like, I can't pass this up. So it's Donut Dealer.
Oh, nice.
And it's a
coffee cream. Ooh,
coffee
nice.
cream ale. Donut Dealer.
How come they don't have it on the website? Is that like it's like a
must
limited
be a special edition type thing? Yeah. So, and they co-pack with, I've had some of their stuff on before. They co-pack with Invader Coffee, which is a great coffee company here locally.
Oh, okay.
They're like 200 yards away from the brewery. So they do combo deals all the time, but it's definitely a creamy ale.
Yeah.
So yeah,
hold them up. Let's compare. Yeah. Look at that.
So
I expected yours to be a little darker.
Yeah. My last two, even though they've been coffee cream ales, they don't have much coffee. So I guess people like a lot of milk in their cream. Yeah. Coffee cream, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Let's cheers it up. Test it out.
All right.
It's good to have the sound effects back.
Yes. Not bad. Not bad.
Mine is meh. Yeah.
That's a sad statement for a beer that has a donut on the front.
Yeah, it's like that's twice I've been deceived by the can in 2 weeks in a row.
Yes.
Like if I was just drinking the beer, like I don't think I'd be disappointed, just like last week. In fact, I had last night for dinner, I had the beer I had last week, and it was actually better. I was having a steak, so the offset, it was much sweeter.
Ooh, yeah,
with that than it was.
Yeah.
So, sometimes drinking these on their own also plays into it a little bit, but this just it tastes a little just kind of plain, considering it's a Donut Dealer cream ale, coffee cream ale. Like, just doesn't have all that going on.
Yeah.
So,
false advertising, I guess.
So yeah,
go ahead, hit him, Sean.
I'm gonna give it a 2.99.
Oof, boy.
Yeah, it's just.
You might.
I mean, might as well just do a lager or something. Like, it's just not much to it.
Yeah. Huh? Sometimes
it's not bad.
Looks can be deceiving.
And it's a letdown. If you overhype it, then the product doesn't live up to the hype on the can. So
yeah.
But anyway, all right. So where are you at?
Well, I was expecting less, and I got more. So I'm going to counter your score and give this one. I'm going to give this one a 4-1. It's good, but it's not great. It's just not quite my style. But it's not bad. It's not bad. It's better than I anticipated. So
yeah, we're about to go in, to a tough time of year for us as beer guys.
Yes, that's right. We will be drinking pilsners and IPAs.
Yeah, I'll probably break out the
seltzers. Will come around August.
Yeah, but some of the shandies, maybe. Some of those kind of things.
Yeah, that's Bob Bly's thing. He likes those shandies. He's come on before. He talked about that.
Yep, I like those too. So at least for summer, Front Porch Rocker.
Yep,
it's a good one, and that's a good one. So yeah, some of the fruitier beers for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into. So the book, like I said, is You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. Or do we want to do the direct mail first? You want to save that or do that first?
Let's go with the book, because I really want to touch on this, because I think it's important. Yeah. And if we run out of time, we can always feature the direct mail piece next week. So.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna hit a couple things a little earlier than chapter 8 that I was kind of going on. And one of them is called Dummy Up Responses. And we've talked about this before, Jonathan, where we use this when we do sales, especially in-person sales.
Yep.
And he even mentions in the book the Columbo character that we've talked about before. Yeah.
That is the best. If you ever want a good schooling on sales presentations. You should watch a couple of episodes. Go back in the go get on Amazon Prime or Netflix or somewhere where you can find it and download some of those old Columbo episodes.
And I
You'll
think
watch him stumble in and scratch his hair, and his hair's all
yeah,
over. His disheveled raincoat will be all
yep.
wrinkled and
And I think I think Monk is similar in a totally
yeah,
different character, but it's the same. Like you don't give the guy credit,
yeah.
because he's weird and
Well,
he's like neurotic,
that's right.
So it's like, ugh, I don't know who this guy is, but whatever. Just get him
They
out of here.
yeah, they underestimate them pretty much
Yeah.
just because of the appearance. And
Right.
that's the secret, right?
Yep. And it lowers the guard because it's like, oh, this person is not a threat
Yeah,
because they
right.
can't even get their life together. Right. It's like, and that's where you want people. Like that's
Yeah.
what you want. So,
Yeah.
so these dummy up responses, it's very similar to what we're going to talk about in chapter 8, the negative response. But it's really about like slowing down the whole conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, you want to talk, should we talk about the fishing example he gave in chapter 8?
Yes. Yeah. Which I think is a fabulous way of explaining it.
Yeah. Why don't we start with that? Because I think some of these things also kind of fit in that same category because it's really all about slowing down the sale a little bit.
Right.
So you want to tell the story or you want me to?
Yeah. So anybody that's ever gone fishing, I think people that aren't like, they don't fish quite often, they're not experienced fishermen. You throw out your line, you take your rod, you throw it out there, you're in the boat, and you start to see that cork bob. And as soon as you see that cork go in the water, what's the first instinct? Like, I mean, even with me, and I fished long enough that I know the first instinct is you want to start to jerk that because you think you're going to hook that fish right away when that cork goes under.
You get excited. You think you got it.
Absolutely. And it's like, oh man. And it's just, your blood's rushing. And so you can't wait to pull that thing in. But what do you end up doing? Because he's toying with it right now. He is actually, and what's happening is, as he explains in the book, which is kind of interesting, is that he's creating, like, once he takes that first bite, he actually alerts a lot of the other school of fish that they're around. And so you got to give it time, because his next reaction, if you give it time after he pulls it under that first time, is that he's eventually going to try to take that bait and run with it because he's keeping it from any of the other fish out there. Right.
Yep.
But if you're snatching it, you're not giving him a chance to, take the bait. Right.
Right.
Because right now he's just biting it and pulling at it. And so you've kind of jumped the gun. I mean, there's a good analogy in hunting too. People that, aren't patient enough and shoot the first deer that comes out in the wood line. That's crazy. Yeah. Any experienced hunter would know that you got to be patient. But fishing, I think, is a better example in terms of this sales analogy.
Yeah, and he even said, like a lot of times fish will slap the bait with their tail to try to kill it.
Yeah,
right? Which would make the bobber move. But their mouth's not even near it at that point. So you yank it up and you probably yank so hard that it just pulls the bait off or whatever. Right. And so you're like, oh, I got an empty hook. Like, what happened? So
yank it into a tree.
Yeah. He was saying the same thing happens. Like you get excited. Somebody gives you a, buying question.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so how would I place an order? It's like, you would think that's a pretty good buying signal, right? Pretty good buying question. But it may not be. It may be they're just kind of getting an idea of timelines, right? They may not be ready yet.
Right.
So what you have to do is what you talked about with the fishing now. You have to let a little bit of line out with questions or a statement or whatever, and then let the fish grab it and run with it. And once it's kind of down and gone, then you set the hook.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost giving them the opportunity to talk themselves out of the sale.
Yeah, just almost to walk away. And that's what this section feels like if you're not used to this kind of selling.
It's counterintuitive, but
Yeah,
it
and
works.
it's even more than we've talked about takeaway selling in here before, but it's even a little bit stronger than that, I think.
I think so, because it gets into to me, this is more specifically related to, the actual sales conversation, right?
Yeah. So as you were going through there, so we've talked about the fish, and basically is we want you want to stop handling objections. You want to stop going through for the kill too fast. And the person that told me to read this, they do this in an email back and forth with potential clients, right? So or in DMs. A lot of people use this in DMs now.
Yeah.
So if you get too eager too soon, you'll scare the prospect off.
Yep.
So you got to push back a little bit. So what were some of the favorite things you have in there? I don't know if you got notes. If not, I can pull some down.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but what I do remember is almost having them do the selling for you, because when you say it, as we've said in the past, if you say it, it's one thing. It's not it's not as trustworthy. But if you get them to say it, right? If you get them to help sell you, why? Like if I'm selling to you, Sean, if I'm selling, if I'm selling a material or a product to you, and I say, well, Sean, I don't know if we're going to be able to meet your 2-day lead time, right? I mean, that's a little fast, right? And we're busy. We have generally a 7-day lead time. Is that going to be a problem? And
yeah,
and so I have to throw it back on you, to get you to explain, like almost push back. Cause like, instead of saying, oh yeah, we can do that, Sean, we can meet your lead time and all this, I might say to you, Sean, I just don't know if, I'm going to be able to agree to that 2-day lead time that you really want. Is that going to be a problem for you? And then
you can even flip that around a little bit. You could say, let's say they were just talking and they, it kind of comes out and they're talking, we like to place an order on Monday and have it here by Wednesday.
Yeah.
So you're like, that's 2 days.
Yeah.
So a amateur salesperson would be scrambling to figure out and call the manager, hey, can we make an exception? Can we do this in 2 days? Right. I think I got a deal, right? Getting all excited because the bobber's moving.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about deliveries. When the pro salesperson will be like, whoa, time out. You said you place orders on Monday and you want them here by Wednesday. Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So if you as the salesperson say it and you say, that's a problem, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then they have a phrase in here, which is great. And this is one of the phrases that so the guy's training I was going through was Travis Sago, for those that know him. Mm-hmm. And one of the phrases he picked out is it over?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you get a big sticking point like that. And you're like, so instead of ending with it's a problem, you could start with, hey, wait, time out, problem.
Yeah.
We can't do a 2-day delivery. Jonathan, is it over?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's basically you've laid down you've drawn a line in the sand right there. So,
yeah. And if you're willing to walk away, they're not going to want it to be over because you're probably the first honest person they've had in there in 6 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
So they're like, no. We could probably figure something out, or maybe we could back up our order date to Friday or something like that. Like, we could probably figure something out. But now they're selling themselves on what they could do, right, and the options and the alternatives.
Exactly. Yep.
Which there always are.
Right. Yeah. That question is that going to be a problem, or is that going to kill this deal?
Yeah.
What you're doing is getting them to decide or explain to you possibly how that's not going to kill the deal. And he starts hopefully working around their own solutions as to how they can make an exception to that,
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can put in an order ahead of time, or maybe we can work around it. Maybe we can let give you 7 days, get the PO in 7 days beforehand. how can we, is this going to be the one thing that kills the deal? And you're just trying to throw it back on them to see if, is it worth killing the deal?
Yeah. So here's an example he gave in the book. So a prospect says, "I really like your service." And the wise salesperson would respond, the amateur's going to be getting all excited. Great. Do you want me to start the paperwork? Like blah, 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 blah. And the person goes, no, slow down. We're not doing that, Sonny. But the wise salesperson responds, "That's fine. However, are you sure you've given this enough thought?"
Yeah.
That's like, whoa, wait.
That's like asking, that's like saying, I don't even want the sale,
Yeah.
But it's, that's hard to say,
Yeah.
Are you sure you've thought this through? That's because that could be, man, that would be tough for my industry, to some people in my industry, because they would find that flat out insulting.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you have to know your industry,
a little careful
bit, how you say it. So here was in his little dialogue. So the prospect then comes back, "Well, I'm not sure about that."
Yeah.
And then the salesperson would say, "Maybe there's something else you'd like to ask me before you decide to make this investment. For example, you could have asked me about blank." Yeah. Especially if there's something hanging out there that could be a deal killer, and they just haven't thought of it yet.
Yeah.
That would be a good time to use this.
Yep.
I'll
give you another example that I've used, and I had this was actually recently, where I had a company that wanted, traditionally it's net 30 terms when you're doing business.
Right.
And they wanted net 60. And I said, no, that's just, that's a 2-month window. And I was just like, and I pretty much, it was kind of one of those situations similar to how this played out. But I said, that's not even going to be possible. And I don't know if I said that's going to be a problem, but we left it at that. And then they were able to come back and say, well, what about, net 45, which I said, that may be doable. Let me see what we can do there. And so I was able to, it just shut this down, but it did get them to come down a little, and we kind of met. Yeah, I guess you'd say we met a little bit halfway, which was agreeable. Net 45, which is, but net 60 ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, like, I mean, at that point, you're being a line of credit.
Yeah,
like you're a bank line of credit at that point.
Right.
And if, depending on the prospect, I mean, you could almost say something like that. It's like, well, at net 60, we're almost a line of credit at that point, and we're not really in the banking business.
That's right.
So that's not going to work.
That's right.
And they would understand, most people in that, if you're talking to the higher level people, they would absolutely understand that and appreciate that.
Yep.
So you're wanting to, so some of the other things, so that was kind of the negative reverse part, is you just want to slow it down. You almost want to talk them out of it.
Yeah.
To make sure they want it. And I tell you, we've talked about this before, and it came up today I was messaging with a friend of mine, and they were looking for some sales questions. And I've talked about this before, but when you ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at on moving forward? And they give you like a 7, and you immediately come back with, well, why was the number not lower?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. Because most people are like, why is it not higher? Right. I want to fill that gap between 7 and 10. But a savvy salesperson will say, why is the number not lower? Because then it forces the person to justify the 7.
Right.
And they've got to kind of sell themselves on why it was that high. And even if they say 3, it's like, well, why was it not a 1 or 2?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you, and you have at least something to work with.
Yep.
And the other analogy he gives in the book in this section is like a pendulum swinging back and forth.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
As long as you can keep that pendulum moving,
yeah,
you're in the conversation.
Right.
So even if you have to get it swinging in the what appears to be the wrong direction at first, the momentum of the conversation will allow it to eventually swing back in your favor. Which I thought was another good analogy that
absolutely
I've not heard before.
Right. I tell you what, here's a difficult thing that I don't know if you've ever done this, Sean, but saying, have you considered other companies that could meet this?
Yeah.
They could meet what you're that could meet the requirements of what you're looking for, because I may not be the right person for you.
Yeah.
And that really gets like, I mean, that's almost like that tells them, you don't really need the business. And you're asking them, have you explored other options?
Yeah.
Just to see. And that's actually good information, because it gets them. Sometimes you can get like, if they're honest, you can get some feedback from them if they have explored other companies. That's actually good information for you to
Yeah. And it's a
pull
good way
out.
to get into, what they didn't like about those companies and why you're
Right.
there.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Because if they've talked to other companies and you're there, that means there's something they didn't like about that. Or
That's right.
they're a spreadsheet guy and they're just putting together the spreadsheet of pros and cons
Exactly.
and all
Right.
that stuff. But yeah, I do that in my coaching conversations when I'm talking to people. I'll say, what was your, we'll talk about, I'll have a section in the conversation about who's the last coach you worked with, or tell me about the last coach you worked with.
Right.
Why did it go well? What went
Mhm.
well? What didn't go well? What were you expecting to get that you didn't get? Like those kind of questions. And that's really valuable because you'll get the unspoken, what they really want.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
All right. So let me flip back through some other sections of the book.
Okay.
So going back to these dummy up responses. So the prospect might ask something like, how long have you been in business?
Mm-hmm.
And a salesperson would say, that's an interesting question. You must have asked it for a reason. May I ask what it is?
Yeah, that's good.
And it feels like that's a little like off-putting.
It feels like you're on the defensive, kind
I
of.
mean,
Like,
but the fact is, if you say it correctly,
yeah,
with the right tonality and things like that, because the prospect knows they're asking that kind of just to blow smoke. Like nobody really cares how long you've been in business.
yeah,
They're kind of grasping for things to talk about and
sure,
to try to, I guess it might matter to some people, but most people it doesn't really matter. It's just they don't know what else to ask.
mm-hmm.
Right. So if they say, so let's say you say that's an interesting question, you must have a reason, you must have asked it for a reason. They might come back with something like, well, we just want somebody that's stable and they're going to be around for the long haul.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, so what I'm hearing you say is that dependability and long-term relationships are important to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Right. So now you know why they're asking the question instead of just saying 17 years.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then another one is prospect.
That one's one of those you like you said, Sean, you really need to say that one. Probably should practice that one a little bit before that conversation of how you respond in that way. Right. And not in such a defensive way, but more or less in an investigative format. Like you're really curious. That's interesting you asked that. Is there a reason? Is there a reason you would ask that?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question.
And
is there a reason you would ask that?
The tonality is really important.
As opposed to, why are you, so why are you asking that?
Big difference. What's that matter?
What does that matter? Why are you asking? Okay. What are you doing?
Yeah. So here's another one. Is it guaranteed? Supposing I said it was, what happens next?
Yeah.
And then they pause. Good. Supposing I said it wasn't. And you ask, and you would,
and don't say anything else. Shut your mouth.
Yeah. And you would kind of say that in a question. Supposing I said it wasn't.
Yeah.
And the person's they're gonna have to come up with an answer. Like, right? Well, we want guaranteed. Mm-hmm. I understand that. Is there a reason that's so important to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the last guy screwed us. Okay. Now we're getting
now we see.
Yeah. right? So
Now we're getting
if you're
somewhere.
willing to slow the conversation down, you'll get so much more information back.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and if you also, so let's shift this to online for a second, right? So you can't often ask these things like if you're in an email, or like if you're sending out emails, or if you got a web page, a sales page, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you could do is you could take this book and you could go through and you think about, like, why is he giving these examples, like the guaranteed, right? So that means in your FAQ section on your sales page, where you ask, is this right? Because everybody always has that, is this guaranteed?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have to answer it because it's a web page, it's sales page.
Right.
It's not a back and forth. But if you think about why somebody might ask that, what their answers might be, if I answered back the way the book's talking about, you can work some of that reasoning into your copy, whether
Yep.
you have a guarantee or you don't, and say, hey, we don't have a guarantee because we found, blah, 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 da, 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 da. And you kind of go ahead and have that conversation for them.
Right.
So you can use a lot of these questions like that. So here's a good one. It's more than we want to spend. That's what a prospect says. You'll hear that one almost every time, right? The salesperson says, that's not unusual. Off the record, how much were you hoping it would be?
Yeah.
And I found that people will give you that answer.
Yeah.
Pretty, because I've used some form of that before. And depending on how big their gap is, if it's really big, I'll actually laugh at their answer. Like, let's say I say it's 12,000. They say, well, I thought it was going to be like 4,000. I'll be like,
yeah,
that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
No, I've had, yeah. That's, and then you can like, well, then let me recommend somebody that probably fits within that.
Yeah. So here's how he follows up. So the prospect would say, 4,000. Salesperson said, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. So fixing your problem isn't really that important,
right?
If you're only willing to spend 4,000, it's really not that important.
Yep. And getting them to admit that.
Yeah.
If that's the case, sometimes you get to the honest part of that where it's not a huge, and I've had those conversations with buyers that says ultimately, similar to that, then this is not as important as I was led to believe. And they'll say, sometimes they'll be honest and say, I guess it wasn't because it's not a priority.
Right.
And we're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And that tells you need to do some better questioning on the front end,
That's right.
So, but even if they say, yeah, it is important. It's like, well, based on your budget of your wish of $4,000, because they didn't say it was a budget. They just said what they thought it was going to be. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, which part of the problem would you like fixed?
Yeah.
If we could only fix like a third of it, which part would you want to fix?
Right.
And then they're like, ooh, like, yeah, I guess I see your point. Right.
And that's kind of like using some assumptive closing there too. A lot included in that because it's future oriented.
Yeah.
Talking past the sale.
So let me look at some other ones real quick. I mean, the book is just full of like questions and like little mini dialogues like that.
Yeah.
So it's really worth going in and looking at. But so this is a good section. I think everybody needs to. I see this all the time with coaching clients, and just in communications in general.
Yeah.
All of us are much more loose with our language than I think we were 20 or 30 years ago. Like everybody's very non-committal with their language. And if you don't tie those things down, you're going to just be left wondering and waiting for the B-back bus.
Yep.
And we know that if B-backs or greenbacks, we'd all be rich, right?
Yeah.
So here's the 3 things that you want to avoid when you're kind of getting to that point where you're talking about contracts. Number 1, he says, no mutual mystification. Any communication you have with your prospect must have a clear understanding about what happens next. So it's not, hey, Jonathan, can we meet next week? Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You always nail down the next appointment. Sure. I've got Thursday at 3:00. Will that work for you? No, let's do Friday at 1. Great.
Yeah.
But now you've got a solid second appointment, not a next week,
Right.
which is pretty vague and is easy to push off, right? So you got to nail down that kind of thing. No wishy-washy words. When a prospect says to you, things look good, Sue, and I'm hoping that next week we might be able to do something, you might think, wow, I've got the order. The prospect is thinking, I'm not sure who I'll give this order to. Chances are it might not be you.
That's right.
Better to clarify the wishy-washy words.
Yes.
So you might say something like, appreciate that. What does looks good mean to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm not sure I understand exactly what looks good means. Is that, and you can usually come up with something witty there if you practice that. A friend of mine used to use something absurd, like when he would give them two options and both would be like really absurd.
Yeah.
They don't even make sense in the conversations. Like he's like, are we talking about playing baseball in a ice rink, or are we talking about this? You know, he would make it just intentionally very ridiculous to prove the point that I don't understand what you're saying, right? And then they would be like, no, I mean this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So that's you want to nail down those, like, what does look good? I have somebody message me right now on LinkedIn. They messaged me asking me if I'd be interested in something. It was just very vague, and I was like, what do you mean by, and that key phrase that was in the kind of thing?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I was wondering if you would give this, this, and this. Yeah. I was like, basically they want free advice. And I'm like, I'd be happy to do that for $500 for an hour's worth of advice.
That's right.
So, and the thing is, it sounds harsh, but most people will really respect it if you do it.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Because it does make the whole relationship more clear.
Yep.
And the last thing is no smoke. Your gut is your built-in smoke detector. Learn to rely on it. Prospects are forever blowing smoke at salespeople. Don't take it. No guessing, no surprises, no assumption. Just if there's something unclear, make sure you're asking for clarity. Basically, it's kind of what he talks about. And then the last thing before we move into your little direct mail piece, he has this section here, the 5 emotions that lead to buying decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about a 5-part formula for moving through these emotions. So there's basically 5 types of emotions: pain in the present.
Yep.
Pain in the future, pleasure in the present, pleasure in the future, or just interest and curiosity. So those are the emotions that you deal with throughout the sales cycle, hopefully. So you've either got to find a pain in the present, one in the future, pleasure in the present, one in the future, or just get them curious and keep them talking, keep that pendulum swinging.
Absolutely.
And his little thing, and I've not heard this before, but it's similar to, copywriting formulas or things like that. His 5-step process to move through pain is to take them from feeling well, to hurt, to sick, to critical, to then miracle, which is your product or service.
Yeah.
Right. And he actually breaks that down over a couple pages. That's chapter 11 if you're curious about that one. So
cool.
But there's tons of good stuff in this book.
Yeah.
And like one of the top sales trainers out there right now, man, I was reading through this. I was like, oh, that's where he got all this stuff from.
Right.
He's not as smart as I thought he was.
Nothing new under the sun, man. Chapter. Yeah. I'll have to read that because chapter 8's the only one on negative reverse selling.
Yeah.
And that was gold. I mean, it's gold, Jerry. Gold. I loved it. So and
that can be used really well in email too. If you're close, if you think you're close to the sale before you try to close it, it works for like when people say things like, well, send me a proposal.
Yeah.
Okay. If I were to send you a proposal, what would be the next step? Or what specifically would you be looking for in that proposal?
Yeah.
Like keep them talking and moving, because that's usually a surefire way to, so for instance, Travis, when he was talking about this, he said, we don't send in, he enrolls people through email. He He's like, we don't send enrollment links until you're 100% committed. Are you 100% committed?
That's right.
And it
That's
gives them an
good too,
out.
because it's commitment and consistency. It's playing into
Yeah.
one of the 6 principles of influence. You got to get commitment, man, or you're, because you want them completely committed in the sale to get them to be a long-term customer, or not have like, the cold feet at the end, so to speak.
Yeah. And when I do coaching clients, and, it's paid up front, it's usually a pretty decent amount, and I'm in that part of the conversation, I will ask them, like, especially if they're going to wire the money or something like that.
Yeah.
I will ask them specifically. I'll be like, so before we go, I'm excited to get started with you, but tell me, what are some things that could stop you between now and you getting to the bank or logging onto the computer and transferring the money? What are some things that might stop you from actually going through with the transfer?
That's right.
And they're like, well, I really don't think anything, but I guess I could get cold feet. I'm like, yeah, you could.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do if you did start to get cold feet? And they'd be like, well, and then they'll just sell themselves.
Right.
They're like, well, I'd remember this conversation. I would, I'd blah, blah, blah. And great. So, what about your spouse? Like, you obviously haven't talked to them because we just talked and they weren't on the call. So,
right.
How's that going to go? And I'll coach them through that if they think it might be a problem.
Right.
So, all of these techniques do the same thing. And that is, they show that you are confident and that you are not needy.
Right.
And that's the magic. If there's a magic to sales, not having commission breath is it.
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely. And as soon as if they sense that you need it,
yep,
it's done. And I like that, like really, flushing out those possibilities. Like, even if it's not them getting cold feet, like you said, Sean, a spouse is, or, someone who's a part of their family could negatively talk them out of that. So you need to find out, like, are there any people in your life currently that could talk you out of this, or may have something that would be negative.
Yeah. And I'll usually do like 2 or 3 scenarios. I'll be like, well, Jonathan, I know you're excited about this and I'm excited about it too. I think we're going to do some cool stuff together. But what if, like, soon as we hang up, you log on to Facebook and you see somebody just tearing life coaches apart, like just how bad it was, what a waste of money it was.
Yeah, right.
You're going to have some doubt in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to handle that?
Right. Yeah.
Because somewhere along our relationship, something's going to, you're going to hear something or think something that is going to make you think that maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Right.
How are you going to handle that when it comes up, whether it's before you send me a payment or 3 weeks after?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, well, it's a good question. And then they'll sell themselves. And then now you're back to what you just said, commitment and consistency, right? Now they've said like 4 times why they want to do this.
Yeah.
And it's good for the prospect too. That was another thing he said in here, and we'll finish with this, but he talked about, what was it, page 73, manipulation. And, I've never actually looked, and usually I do this kind of stuff. He talked about the definition of manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never actually looked up the definition of manipulative. And usually I'm a word guy, so I usually do that.
Yeah. Right.
But here's what it means: to work or handle skillfully. So that's manipulate, right? Now there is a version of it that is, to manage artfully or shrewdly, often in an unfair way. Not always, but often. But I like, that first definition, to work or handle skillfully.
Skillfully, yeah.
And prospects are coming in with a lot of baggage, and they're coming armed with their own version of manipulation as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you think they're not, you're just being naive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? They know the tricks to how to get salespeople out of their office. They've been on enough sales calls, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they
Oh
know
yeah.
to talk to your spouse.
Some of them are actually salespeople themselves. So
Yeah, they know that they know it
now, if
works.
they're any
And what
good, they
doesn't.
know. I mean, it's like, I've had those conversations before.
Yeah,
Hey man, listen, I've been in sales, you're in sales, so we know how the game's played. We know how this goes down.
yeah,
Um, and that's why it's good that's why I love this, because you basically take people off their guard sometimes
yep,
when you go about this, because you do present in a way that you don't need them.
yeah,
Uh and that's the way it should be. You should never put all of your eggs in one basket anyway. I mean, it's like this is a process. Hopefully, you're skillful enough that you have um there's other opportunities out there, right?
and I think too, you just got to be willing to be like, if you feel something in your gut, you just got to be willing to say it.
That's
So
right.
I'll give you an example. Last year I was doing some sales for a trading service. I was wanting to try my hand at high ticket for a little while. And I was talking to this guy, and I was like, this guy really feels like he's shopping me, like he's just kind of
Yes.
on the call to figure out what we're doing. And I was like, time out, time out. I was like, dude, appreciate your time, but it really feels like you're shopping me and you're just trying to figure out what our process is.
Yeah.
And he started laughing because he's like, yeah, actually I am. And from there we had a great conversation. I still didn't get the sale, but
Yeah.
it was
He was doing some recon work.
yeah, he was doing some recon work, and I called him out on it, and
Yeah.
like I said,
Yep.
didn't get the sale, but at least he knew that I knew.
That's
you
right.
know, and,
That's
and
right.
like
Yeah.
knew what was going down. So I'm sure a better salesperson could have turned him and got the sales. Like, if you really want to know what we're up to, like, go ahead and buy the
Right.
product.
Exactly.
But I did say that, I think, or some version of that, but he go for it. So yeah,
By the way, I've got a good response. You mentioned that LinkedIn. People that you ever heard that pick? I just want to pick your brain. Like,
oh yeah,
so Sean, the next time somebody says, "I'd like to pick your brain," you tell them, "You can pick my brain after you pick your payment method."
I like it.
That's your response.
I like it. Yeah, I don't think many people say pick your brain anymore, but
No,
even if they don't,
used so much.
yeah, but even if they don't, you could still use that because they're saying basically the same thing. So that's basically
Usually
what this guy said.
nowadays that only comes from people that have enough familiarity. Maybe they've had a few conversations with you
Yeah,
to think, I can like pick his brain, and
yeah,
I know him well enough now,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah, that's when it's
discounting
dangerous.
actually what you do, which is actually an insult if they know you, to
Right.
discount what you do, to think you're just going to give them some free advice.
Yep.
How many people do you know that would do that? Even friends, listen, like, would you go before, like some high end attorney that that's like, oh yeah, I need you to give me some free leave. Like, hey man,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to pay.
Yeah.
I got a business to run.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we're running short because you gotta bounce.
I'm good right now. So go ahead. Let's do the
Okay.
direct
Yeah.
mail piece real quick. I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. So let me pull this up. I got to show this because I think you might appreciate this, Sean. So this is from a local, this came in the mail, I think about a week and a half ago, from a local roofing company. And let's see, let me pull this up. Present. Let's see here. All right. This is pretty cool because I had never seen this kind of format before. Can you see that on the screen? Let's pull it up on the face on the
You need to zoom in a little bit.
yeah, let me it's too much. There we go. And of course I'm giving the guy's name and I'm giving him some free. Is that too?
Pick one.
There we go.
There.
Okay, this is perfect. Okay, so it actually went to my wife, which is probably a smart move.
Yes.
So at the top, this was kind of cool. It said, "Did your home suffer any damage during the storms that occurred last year? So you're thinking, okay, which storm are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
And then he says, have we inspected your roof yet? My name is such and such with Fiesel, and many roofs in your neighborhood were damaged by the hailstorms we had last year. The image below displays all hailstorms that occurred in 2023. Some areas reported hail up to 1.5 inches in diameter. If your home was affected in the area, so yeah, they
that
pulled the
map
map
is
up.
your area, right?
That's right. The map is my area.
I don't know how big of an area that is, but your house is under the purple.
That's right. My house is under the purple.
Okay. All right.
Which is kind of vague. If he had been, I think if he had been more specific, if he had known exactly when, a serious storm that came through, like below our the below displays all hailstorms that occurred in 2023. Well, I mean, I don't know how, which one that was.
Yeah.
But if you were to say, like, for instance, back in 2011, when we had that was, I think you remember that because you lived in this area back then, Sean.
Yeah, I had 2 cars that one was $500 from being totaled. Another was in the shop for 6 months. Like,
oh yeah,
it was awful.
Yeah, people's just got their cars just got destroyed out of those things. But that's serious. I mean, that's one that's that's a memorable hailstorm.
Right.
But it says if your home is affected, if your home is in the affected areas above, there's a chance that your roof has been damaged. Most of the damage cannot be seen from the ground, and an inspection is required. Your insurance company only gives you a limited amount of time to have your property, it's like the like you only have so much time. That's pretty good.
Yep.
Your insurance company only gives you so much time to have your property inspected and report any damages. So that gets people thinking. So I thought, man, that's kind of unique. I've never seen one quite like that. It's
and if you remember having, 1 or 2 hailstorms, you're like, well, I mean, it puts just enough doubt in your mind.
Right.
It's like, well, I don't want to pay for a whole roof myself.
That's right.
Doesn't hurt to give the guy a call.
And he's not trying, and it's good because he's like, I wanted to personally, I love that. I wanted to personally reach out and see if there's anything I can do to help. If you haven't done a rooftop inspection if we haven't done a rooftop inspection for you yet, an inspection is always free. I'd be happy to provide a detailed breakdown with photos of what needs to be fixed and what can wait. So obviously that's a funnel approach.
Yep.
Get them first to commit, for an inspection. But I thought, man, that's pretty good because I've never seen one quite like this that includes the weather map or the radar map and who knows when that was. Obviously that's my area, but who knows when that was. I mean, it could be, I don't know what the date would be. There's nothing.
I know a lot of these big roofing companies, there's actually a subscription they can join.
Yeah.
It tells them where all the hailstorms have hit, like neighborhood by neighborhood.
Right.
So they probably subscribe to something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. That's cool. I like it. I'm curious, like the envelope it came in, because you obviously opened it.
Well, you see it. It was folded. It came in a regular, like a standard. It wasn't like a big 8.5 by 11. It was just folded, and it was if I recall, it was, I can't remember if it was personalized, like a handwritten printed style or not, but it was intriguing enough to want to open it because it was just in the standard envelope. And it didn't look, it looked like it didn't look like junk mail. So I'll tell you that. That's why I got open. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think once you open it, you see the picture. You're like, well, what's this about?
Yeah, what's this about? Well, especially with the image. So, my wife showed me that, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta hold on to that. That's a topic of discussion right there. That's pretty good.
So the real question is, did you call the guy?
No, because I didn't. Well, first of all, I didn't have time. She handles all that, but I didn't recall a hailstorm. I was like, it did get me thinking because I asked her, when was there a hailstorm that happened? Like, when was that? And notice that it says, 2020, the whole year of 2023. So I was like, I couldn't remember at a time, because I know we've had some storms that came through, but I couldn't remember any serious hailstorm where we really, our area, but maybe there are some areas around our, close to where we live that got hit, but not us specifically. So I didn't feel it necessary, because I know what my roof would cost to get fixed if I had to replace it, and that's really not in the cards right now. Hopefully,
yeah. We've had a couple hailstorms already this spring, so I wouldn't be surprised if we start getting some letters as well.
Yeah, it's true though. I like the fact that they tell you you've got a limited amount of time before, the insurance company will cover that. So,
it would have been good if they could have, been a little bit more specific on that. Like, there's definitely some specificity. Yeah, that's like one of those Ted Lasso words. It's like you say it a couple times, and it's like, doesn't make sense anymore.
But that, you know what, as we talk, I'm selling myself now on and calling this company, because I'm thinking, I got a free roof. I don't know about you guys, but I got a free roof back in 2011 when the last major hailstorms came.
We were renting at the time, but I think they got theirs replaced.
Yeah.
And then we had windows blown out and everything. It was wild.
Yeah.
And we actually there was like 2 storms back to back that week in Knoxville. Like, one was like straight line winds that were like it's crazy over in Sequoia Hills. That's where we were.
Yep.
And then I think a couple days later it hit Farragut and all that stuff. So that was crazy, because literally every body shop in town was booked for like a year after that.
Oh, it was crazy. Our whole neighborhood I think every house in our neighborhood at the time got a new roof. It was like,
it was a boom.
Imagine being an insurance adjuster at that time.
Oh, that was crazy. They were setting up, the car adjusters were setting up in schools and everything. It was insane.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. All right.
Well, good stuff, man.
Yeah. Fantastic book. I'm going to read the rest of it here coming up, because I got it on Kindle, and that chapter 8 was phenomenal on the negative reverse selling. So recommend everyone get a copy. We'll provide a link on the show notes. And to everyone out there, hope you have a great weekend. You can find us on all of your favorite podcast locations where you download podcasts, or where you get your podcast fix for the week. Sean, I guess we've got a guest coming on next week on writing captivating email subject lines. I can't wait to read, because I've actually downloaded the guy's book. I haven't read it yet. So
I don't know where it is. I've got it here somewhere, but yes. Donnie Bryant will be on.
Donnie Bryant. Yes.
He writes emails for a lot of the big direct response companies. So be good to get his feedback. It's the book is pretty short, not a lot to read, but a lot of little formulas, and swipe files and things like that to look at. So it'd just be good to talk to him.
Absolutely.
He's really, we can also talk to him about kind of how he markets himself on LinkedIn, because he does a good job of that as well.
Oh, cool.
He's a very steady voice on LinkedIn, for anybody that's doing copywriting and that kind of stuff. So
excellent.
That should be a good conversation.
Should be a great conversation.
Yeah. So he's smarter than both of us. So
absolutely. Well, that's good. You always want to have somebody smarter than yourself to talk to.
That's right.
That's how you get better. All right. Well, to all of our listeners, thanks for tuning in. And again, leave us 5 stars wherever you find your favorite podcast. We appreciate it. And we appreciate your comments on our YouTube channel. We've gotten some comments lately. I was going to share some recently, but maybe next week I'll throw some up that we've had recently that are pretty funny and entertaining. It's everything from the Tyson fight that's coming up. The Tyson, what's the guy he's fighting?
Jake Paul.
Yeah, Jake Paul. Yeah, we've got some comments on that, because somebody wanted to chime in on our discussion with that upcoming fight.
Yeah, we need
by the way, we got to do a marketing podcast. We got to do a segment on that.
Yeah, we need to get Bill Mueller on for that.
Yes, for sure.
Get some of his sports journalism background and see about that.
Yep.
It'd be good to have him on again.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a marketing masterpiece so far. the way I mean, there's whole channels being built on social media around it, that aren't theirs. Like it's just
memes going around, GIFs. I mean, everything, videos. I mean, people are just creating content around this
doing their
fight that's
job
coming
for
up.
them. It's amazing.
That's right. Oh yeah, yeah. It's amazing, but good stuff. Well, hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.